Even though Canadian real estate headlines would have you believe that the sky is falling and all real estate across Canada is crashing, there are several real estate markets expected to outperform the rest of Canada this year, and I think you'll be surprised which ones they are. The definitive guide on how to manage your credit, product, penalty, price, in that order. It's never been more important to get your mortgage right. All right, so welcome back. Last month, Royal Lepage, Canada's arguably largest homegrown real estate company, revised all of their forecasts with respect to Canadian real estate, bringing down the forecasts in most cases. But one thing that went under the radar was the fact that there are several markets that are predicted to outperform the rest of Canada. And in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly which ones those are, so that if you're buying in those certain areas, you can rest assured that you're making a good buying decision. And of course, we'll also point out the ones that aren't necessarily going to perform that well. And I think for most of you, you probably know which ones those are already. But before we get into those details, do me that favor, hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell. And please hit that like button so more people like you can see this video. And if you are thinking about getting into the housing market in the next year or two, and obviously that is a very, very, very scary thing right now, given the higher interest rates and given the fact that housing prices are coming down in several markets, well, we've put together a program for you to help take away a lot of the fear, because I get it. Like, it's one of the scariest things you could possibly do right now is buy a home or even think about buying a home, but it doesn't have to be scary. So if you want to find out more about that, stay tuned till the end of the video. All right, let's get into it. Let's discuss Canadian real estate and which markets are expected to outperform, because contrary to popular belief, there are markets that are coming down significantly. Think Vancouver, think Toronto, that had this crazy amount of exuberance in the market over the last couple of years. And then there's markets that are going up in value right now and continue to go up, or at least remain flat. Yes, the sky is not falling across Canada. So let's jump into the headlines and talk a little bit about which markets those are. So like we always do, here's the headlines. First and foremost, from the Calgary Herald: housing market forecast to continue to gain value. Calgary and Edmonton real estate expected to lead the way with increases of 8 and 9% this year. So what the heck is happening in Calgary and Edmonton? Well, this is really quite simple. There wasn't the same amount of exuberance in Calgary and Edmonton that there was in Toronto and Vancouver and everywhere else that happened during the pandemic. So in other words, we had kind of this economy that since 2014 has been a little bit mild and has ended up being one of those economies where things are just getting back to normal as we come out of the pandemic. So as a result, we're starting to see increasing prices here rather than declining prices as Calgary and Edmonton catch up to the rest of the economy and the rest of the markets in Canada. Now, there's one other market as well that seems to be outperforming, and that's Montreal. And I just got back from Montreal last week. Actually, check out my shirt. This is from Royal Montreal. Had an amazing time there, and what you can tell is that that city is full of life right now, even in the middle of the summer when people tend to be away from that city and vacationing elsewhere. So there are three markets essentially in Canada that are performing really, really well: Montreal, Calgary, and Edmonton. And by the way, the other prairie provinces and the maritime provinces also continue to fare very, very well. And what's the moral of the story here? Well, the moral of the story is this, is that just because the sky is falling in Toronto or is falling in Vancouver doesn't mean that the sky is falling across the rest of the country, because in those markets that have high technology bases or finance bases or manufacturing bases, well, they operate in a different way than, let's say, commodity-based or tourism-based economies. So what you end up seeing in Canada in general, in times of really good times or really bad times, is you see certain parts of the market that don't follow the rest of the country. And if you think about it from the perspective of, let's say, Europe is this huge landmass, right? And it's got an insane amount of countries compared to what Canada has, where we have this insane landmass and only one country. So the mistake that Canadians make, and I think North Americans make, is that we look at the US and Canada as a whole, as one economy, instead of looking at the individual markets. And really what's happening in Canadian real estate is it's becoming very, very clear that we need to look at each market individually, whether it's the prairies, whether it's Vancouver and BC, whether it's the interior of BC or Ontario or Quebec or the Maritimes, because these are all different economies. We all have different cultures. Think about how different of a culture that Montreal and Quebec has compared to, let's say, Saskatchewan or Alberta. And we have to consider those things when we look at the markets. So there are certain markets in Canada where it still makes sense to buy a home. And there's also some deals coming up in places like Vancouver and Toronto where they've had the exuberance taken out of the market. The frenzy that was there has pretty much flushed itself out. And now there's opportunities to buy homes at prices that are where they probably should be. Now, it doesn't change the fact that there's still a supply issue with respect to houses in Canada. My guess, and this is just a guess, so don't hold me to this is just a prediction based on what I've seen, is my guess is that the Vancouver and the Toronto markets have seen most of the drop that they're going to see. There's probably going to be a little bit more, but that is basically the craziness coming out of the market. And now we're starting to find ourselves in an equilibrium, which is more in line with where the market should be. Now, if I take you in and I show you the Royal Lepage market survey forecast, what you'll see is this. You've got the Greater Toronto area, I'll come back to Montreal in a second, and you've got the Greater Vancouver area that are expected to be up 3 to 5%. So what you're seeing is this, is that 2022 is basically the year where we're correcting for the craziness that happened in 2021. Now, keep in mind that these aren't the numbers off of the peak. The peak happened in February or March. This is for Q4 compared to Q4. And basically what they're forecasting is that Toronto and Vancouver are going to be flat, and that makes sense. And more importantly, what this means is that they're down significantly off the highs. Now, it could end up that these markets end up going into the negative, who knows? But compared to 2020, these prices are still going to be fairly high compared to what they were if you bought a home in, let's say, late 2019 or those very first months of 2020. Then we get into Montreal. Montreal is expected to be up 12.5%. Again, a very active market there. We're seeing low inventory in those areas. And then Calgary and Edmonton, the commodity-rich cities, and even going into Regina and Winnipeg here, are all expected to be up 8-9%. And that is quite simply because in today's markets, commodities are in a little bit of a bull market. There are higher prices on things like oil and grains and so on and so forth. And that's leading to a stronger economy in those markets, which is leading to continued rises in real estate prices. So if you're buying in Calgary, Edmonton, Regina, you're buying in Halifax, you're buying in Montreal, there's still a good opportunity to purchase properties right now. And you can buy them knowing that they haven't come down a ton and that they likely aren't going to. They're probably going to remain flat for the long term. And at some point they will continue to go up. And the reason for that is quite frankly, because there just isn't enough supply in those cities or any of the cities across Canada for that matter. Now, I know it's still scary to buy in those markets, especially when the headlines focus on Toronto and Vancouver. And I get it, like it's a scary time to think about buying real estate. But the thing that you need to do in order to prepare to buy real estate is get educated. Get educated on the process and know that when you're making that purchasing decision, you're making it in a way that you aren't paying too much for the property. You're not buying just because you feel rushed to get into the market. And you're basically putting yourself in a situation where you're buying a property that you can maintain financially for the long term. Instead of making short-term buying decisions based on the Vancouver and the Toronto headlines, you want to make long-term buying decisions based on your personal financial situation and what the long-term looks like for you. So in order to make sure you have the information you need to do that, we've put together what we call our Homebuyer Masterclass. It is basically a course that is designed to be modular. What do I mean by modular? It means you go in and you pull out the pieces of information as you need it. And it starts at the beginning of saving the down payment when you first decide that you're going to buy a home. It even looks at looking at renting versus buying, and it goes right through till the day you take possession and then set up your utilities and everything else. Talks about dealing with the lawyers, home inspections, contracts, conditions, everything you need to know when you need it. You just go in, and if you're at that point of buying a house and you're writing up a contract, you pull up the writing up a contract module and you'll have all the information that you need so that you aren't relying on your realtor or your mortgage broker or a family member or somebody else. You've got the education and the information that you need. We basically put this together where it just covers my costs of the education platform. It's 3 payments of $47 if you do it today. If you don't do it today, you can still get in at an early bird price prior to August 31st. And the last opportunity to enroll for this cohort, there will be other ones in the future, but it will be September 11th. We'll start on September 12th. And if you're buying 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, get in at the earliest possible time because it's going to walk you through the entire process. And by the way, you'll never see it priced as low as what it is right now. So if you want to join us, go to homebuyermasterclass.ca. And as always, if you found this video useful, do me that favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Please hit that like button so more people like you can see this video, and we'll see you on the very next one. Cheers.